Hello and welcome to the Sky Blue Times YouTube channel. Today I wanted to talk through Savinho, the reports that he is indeed going to stay for this season. There was that proposed move about him moving on to Spurs, Rodrigo being that kind of number one target for Manchester City. Rumours of other players, but very much seemed like that would have been the deal that would have happened. Should Savinho have gone, should Manchester City have been able to find an agreement to bring Rodrigo in? How much there is within that, hard to know, but it seems pretty clear now that Manchester City have decided to keep Savinho and not pursue any other deal, even though Tottenham looked like they were more than willing to pay that fee. Now, I've taken that stance that across these two players, we're either going to keep a very good player or bring in a very good player. And I think there's certainly little differences we'll touch on in this video between the two players. But I don't think at all we're looking at a player that is really not at the same level as the other one. I think one's further in his development. I think one has different skill sets, different kind of physical attributes. But I think people are being disingenuous to play down the ability of Savinho, in my opinion. Now, if we go to Savinho, if we just move this along here, Savinho at Girona really stood out for his output in that season. And he had 9 goals, 10 assists. Rodrigo in the same season in La Liga had 10 goals and 5 assists. So when you're talking about output, he certainly did deliver in that season. Stood out for those long progressive carries, as you can see on the screen right now. Able to pick the ball up from deep and really drive at the opposition. Girona would set up in a way that they'd be asymmetrical of sorts, where they build up in kind of lots of players in tight spaces over on the right hand side. The goal was to get Savinho on the left hand side isolated in space as much as possible, and I can't remember the exact kind of figures on it, but he was basically the most isolated player in La Liga that season, 23-24, at the point when he was receiving the ball as an attacking player. So that means the distance between him and the nearest opposition defender, and the nearest second nearest opposition defender, and the nearest teammate for Savinho to him at the point where he receives that ball. I believe it's in the final third when he receives that ball. He was further than any other player. So that was the game plan, to try and find him isolated in space as the left winger, so he can drive at the opposition, drive 1v1 at defenders, and I believe he finished that season in La Liga with the most open play crosses following a successful 1v1. So that tells you a lot about his game playing on that left hand side. As you can see here, a lot about him going towards the box, towards the byline, and provides a lot of great crosses, particularly those kind of like floated ones from the byline, and then those kind of like long driven crosses lofted into the back post a little bit deeper, all of which we've seen for Manchester City with actual goals. He had 2 goals for Dovbyk that season, 5 goal creating actions, but in terms of the expected numbers, expected assists, he had 2.25, which is the most created by a player for a striker that season in La Liga. So perhaps not the numbers have come through that season, but certainly when you watch them play, and the underlying numbers point towards Savinho being somebody that can build a great relationship with a number 9, especially one like Dovbyk, which has a few similarities to Erling Haaland. And then we did see that play out last season with Savinho providing 6 assists for Erling Haaland goals, 7 goal creating actions. So somebody with that immediate impact, and I know that's something that people bring up with Jeremy Doku, not having that relationship with Erling Haaland, and as well as with other players. While Savinho in his very first season has proven that right away, despite the language barrier, despite other issues, being that first season, being how poor City were, he was able to deliver 6 different assists for Erling Haaland across all competitions. So that really should be a standout. But then, as I mentioned a bit earlier, there's a distinct way that Girona were playing compared to Manchester City. I think him playing on that right wing, you need a player to do more, which is why that just kind of suits him a lot better playing for City versus playing on that left-hand side. You're not always going to be able to find him across all games, being isolated far on that side, like they were trying to do at Girona. You think there's odd games where we've done that for Jack Grealish. You think about the Aston Villa game away, first half in particular. I think that was one of, if not the most progressive passes a winger has received in 45 minutes of football. There was a distinct plan there to get the ball to him isolated in space. It's just not something City are able to do across all games, across all opposition that they'll come up against. So you have to have more to your game. And if you're going to have Savinho over on there, then certainly there's going to be games where that'd be great. But there's going to be other games where you need to have more kind of skills to your game. And so I think that's a lot of that is the driver behind him playing more on that right wing side. If we move over to some more kind of numbers, this is top ball progressors per 90 across the last season, top 5 leagues. You can see Jeremy Doku, number 1. Cherki is number 3. And then you've got Savinho down here as well. Elise, who was very impressive for Bayern Munich. You can see the difference between the more carry and passing side. Jeremy Doku much more leans towards his carrying ability, particularly playing on that left-hand side. See bits of Savinho playing on the left, but primarily playing on that right-hand side. More of him moving infield, moving into the half space, playing on that right-hand side. So yeah, you just see a bit more from him. You compare that to some of the other players here, like Elise, that is very much a kind of creative force for Bayern Munich, despite playing as a right winger. A hell of a lot of progressive passes, and then you look at some of the other players like Trent Alexander-Arnold, a reminder of what Liverpool have lost for this season. Schlotterbeck playing for Dortmund as well, an immense passer of the ball at the back as that left centre back for them. But yeah, at least per 90, you're looking at a player that in Savinho, in Jeremy Doku, but particularly Savinho, as we're touching on in this video, that is up there with some of the best in terms of progressing the ball. And I know a lot of people will want to just narrow in on the goal scoring ability, and we'll definitely touch on that. But you have to be fair and look at all aspects of the game, because all of these things will be very important. There'll be games where it will just be important for these kind of qualities that Savinho brings. That long progressive carry. Maybe him use that in the build-up to a goal rather than the guy directly giving the assist or the guy scoring the goal itself. So yeah, when you're looking at Manchester City wingers, you have to have more to your game. You cannot just be somebody that's able to get into the box and score goals. You have to bring much, much more. If we just move over to this here, this is just a look at those progressive carries the last season in a little bit more detail, and then the passes here are just passes completed after a carry, so you see quite a few of them, but particularly that kind of carries into the half space, moving into midfield. Reminds me, you think about the Arsenal at home game, that first assist for Erling Haaland in the build-up, receiving the ball out wide, first touch inside around Calafiori, driving into the pitch, into the half space, playing that through ball for Erling Haaland. You think about the Erling Haaland goal against Juventus in the Club World Cup, same sort of situation in the build-up, receiving the ball a bit deeper, and then can take a really nice touch, move in field and combine with other players. Savinho brings that quality, as well as his kind of athleticism and pace to carry the ball up the pitch so quickly like he can do, compared to somebody like Jeremy Doku, which is a little bit more short distance with those carries on that left hand side, not somebody that's going to carry the ball halfway across the pitch. And if you think about how when we've been looking at Mateo Kovacic, who we all know is a good carrier of the ball, and we all know Tijani Reinders is a good carrier of the ball, but we can see the difference right away between what Reinders can do over long distances, carrying that ball, opening his legs up, those are long strides, and could just burst all the way through the midfield, compared to Mateo Kovacic, which is looking to kind of burst through a short gap and then lay the ball off. So when you're talking about Savinho, compared to somebody like Rodrigo, you're getting more of those kind of long carries from Savinho, a little bit like what you see from the likes of Barcola or Leao, those kind of transition moments that he can make happen just because of his ability to carry the ball over long distances with real pace. So yeah, real useful weapon to have, especially when you're looking at somebody like Oscar Bob playing on that right hand side as the other person he's rotating with. Very different players, and they just complement each other very well with their skill set. Somebody like Bob, a lot more kind of small spaces with his take on, but then brings a lot to that position with his passing ability into the half space, into the box, combining with other players that make those underlapping runs. So I think having the two of them is a really good foil for one another. So yeah, that's pretty much that. We move to this one, chance creation. These are all his chances across all competitions, Premier League 24-25. 10 assists, not Premier League, sorry, all competitions. 10 assists, 70 chances created. You can see all the assists are the ones that are filled in. Like this one here, coming all the way deep out here, would have been his assist against West Ham for Erling Haaland. That beat a man, that deep cross lofted to the back post. Obviously, creates a lot of chances moving inside, moving into the half space, involved in set pieces, as you can see here. Able to get the ball to the back post as well as get the ball into the 6-yard box from the other side. But yeah, lots of good stuff with Savinho with his chance creation. When I was looking at the numbers, he was first in the team last season for shot creating actions across all competitions and goal creating actions. 134 shot creating actions, 18 goal creating actions. Looking at some of his numbers compared to the rest of the Premier League. So we look at top 20 for most expected assists. The only players with a better per 90 than Savinho, who had 0.31, was De Bruyne, 0.35, and Bukayo Saka, 0.41, who he had a kind of outstanding kind of season when you're looking at just the underlying numbers. Really was like top of the pile. So to only have those two players there in terms of expected assists tells you a lot about the creative ability of Savinho in the Premier League, despite that being his first season in a dysfunctional Manchester City team. You look at Premier League players to have provided 100 plus shot creating actions last season. The only players with a better per 90 than Savinho, who had 5.66, was Cole Palmer, 5.7, Bruno Fernandes, 5.76, De Bruyne, 5.97, and then Bukayo Saka, 6.09. So he is, in terms of the chance creation underlying numbers, he is up there with the very best, despite that being his first season in the Premier League. So there's a lot of detail within his first season, along with the kind of massive disclaimer that he was playing for a team that really did struggle for most of that season. It wasn't at its very best. There was the really bad point in the middle of the season where it looked like everybody lost their kind of courage and confidence going forward, making these runs and wanting to create chances and take risks and get into the box. So this is by no means not the very best version of City that he'll eventually play in across his career. So that's only going to continue to add to those numbers. So when you're looking at the underlying numbers being so good, I expect then your kind of assist numbers and goal numbers will eventually then pick up once the team does improve as we go into the next season. Now, kind of real standout thing, or just before we get to us actually, this is non-penalty XG plus expected assists per 90. And looking at the variation when these players do start games, Savinho is the most consistent player there. So when he starts games, he will consistently deliver you expected goals and expected assists. Now, appreciate people won't want to take those kind of numbers. They'll want the actual goals and the actual assists. But if we're just looking for the promise of Savinho moving forward long term into the next season, the season beyond, then these are really good signs that he is consistent when he does start games, that he's able to create chances and get into good position to score goals, which brings me over to these here. This is the kind of standout area for Savinho when it comes to adding more goals to his game. Although he scored one goal in the Premier League last season, we'd be mistaken to say that he had no chances, and that's going to be the main thing when we look to next season. That at least we know Savinho will get into good positions inside the box, will get good chances. I think that volume can come up, but he's getting into the positions to have those chances. If we were looking back at last season, and I couldn't give you an example here, all of these are, I believe, above 0.3 XG. If we had none here, then that would be much more concerning, because you've got a player that not only has really struggled to score goals, but then on top of that struggles to get into the good positions to score the goals. And as you can see with these four here, there's one more that's from a similar position with a high XG. They're all, as I said, similar position, that right side of the box, just outside or just inside the 6-yard box, using his left foot, trying to go across the goal. You'll see with all of them, his body position is really quite crumpled up rather than on top of the ball and looking quite strong. So he's right kind of bent over on top of that. When it comes to him kind of cutting inside, if you watch back some of the shots when he does do that, he's very much a player that's taking touch before he's taking that shot. You look at some of the very best wingers in the world that score a lot of goals. They are decisive when they make that movement into the box, into the zone where they want to strike the ball, and then they have very good posture, set up the shot, very efficient, and get a good strike on the ball. You look at Savinho when he moves into the box, when he's moving into that space, he's not sure the zone inside the box he wants to shoot from. He doesn't have the right body posture to be able to strike the ball well, and he's kind of dawdling when he is taking a touch, then another touch, then another touch, looking to see what's going on, or even worse, he's not looking to see what's going on. He's just trying to move away from a defender by taking another touch, and then not getting himself into a great position, and for a goalkeeper making it easier for you to just track the player as he moves, and for a defender easier for you to try and follow him and get a block on that shot. So they're the kind of main things there, and that absolutely, without a doubt, has to improve. He has to be more decisive when he moves into that box. So as I mentioned, he has to have a zone he's trying to attack inside that box to then get a good shot off, for sure. He has to have better body posture. He has to strike the ball better, and all these things he has to spend his time working on week in, week out if he wants to be consistent with that. But what we have seen is that he gets into good positions in the box. We have seen more recently in the Club World Cup somebody that's mixing up his runs to get in behind more often, and I think that's really good to see. So yeah, if we just move over to his shot map, this is 23-24, played more on the left wing, but all of the goals he was scoring for the most part were over on this side here. So he's getting these goals when he's scoring in the middle of the penalty box. These two goals here are from when he played on the right wing, beat a player and then scores from that position. But as I mentioned at the top of the video, play on the left wing, they try and get him isolated, and he can do these long carries, attack the box, hit the byline for a cross, and he's then ending up, after coming inside, playing a pass to somebody else, and then still continuing his run into the box and getting a shot off from that position. So he's getting into these good central positions for a shot. You move over to Savinho from last season with Manchester City in the Premier League, and most of his misses, as I've highlighted with those four here, so you've got all these ones here, all in similar positions for Savinho, where he's messing that up. His goal come from over on this spot here, but you see that less and less shots right in the middle of the box compared to what we were seeing with Girona. So that is one of the areas he needs to improve on. And as I mentioned earlier about those kind of block shots where you see this big group in here where he's cut inside, he's taking the touch, and then another touch, then another touch. He's not sure where he wants to take that shot from. He's not decisive moving into a space to strike the ball and being efficient with it at all. So yeah, he definitely has lots to work on when it comes to his shooting, but I think there's a lot of promise with the movement he makes, with the positions he is getting into at times throughout last season, and also when you're looking at the quality chances he has had, those four in particular I showed a bit earlier. If he comes away from this season with 5 goals because he scored those 4 on top of his other one, then we view Savinho completely differently, even though there's a lot of underlying numbers to be quite positive about. But yeah, he has to improve that. That is the kind of main stumbling block for him. When we're looking at all the kind of progressive numbers, the creative numbers, thinking that he's going to link up very well with Erling Haaland and continue to create more and more assists, I think myself and many people will be really quite confident in that. But when you're looking at the goal scoring side of things, that is definitely where he needs to improve. He was the biggest non-penalty XG underperformer in the Premier League last season. His shot volume did come up, which I think is a positive to mention. So Girona, he had 1.36 shots for 90. That went up to 2.81. Shots on target per 90, 0.6 up to 1.07. So it's good that he's taken more shots and that volume's increased. But then when you're looking into it of where that volume's coming from, particularly these kind of ones on the top of the box, cutting inside and quite aimlessly going in and end up getting your shot blocked, that's not a very efficient use of your time and use of that opportunity once you get into the final third. So yeah, definitely somebody who just has to work on and spend that time. So when I'm talking about planting his supporting foot well, when I'm talking about his body posture on top of the ball, the number of touches he takes to try and set up the shot, the ball's kind of too far away from him once he takes it, so he's leaning back and not able to get a good connection on the ball. These are things he just has to spend the time working on. So yeah, right, if we just move over to the last few ones before we wrap up the video. This is just to compare Savinho's underlying numbers to Rodrigo. the player that he reportedly could have gone for, but now it turns out Savinho's going to stay. So you've got the Madrid average from Rodrigo across his career there in La Liga. This is the first one. Then you've got the 22-23, 23-24, 24-25 La Liga seasons from Rodrigo per 90 there as well. And then Savinho in this darker blue here last season with Manchester City. And so no surprise when it comes to non-penalty XG and goals and non-penalty XG per shot. He's down compared to Rodrigo in all these metrics. But then on the flip side, when it comes to expected assists and assists, he's miles ahead of Rodrigo in this per 90 when you're looking at across the last 3 seasons, and then you're looking at the average across his career at Real Madrid. For Savinho, who's in his very first season, and as I mentioned throughout this video, a dysfunctional Manchester City team. We then move over to this one here, key passes. His numbers from last season are at what Rodrigo did at his very best, with that 2.35 to the 2.29. Passes into the penalty area, 2.4 from Savinho, way ahead of Rodrigo in this metric. Successful take-ons in and around. Obviously, Rodrigo had a more standout season, 22-23, but for the most part, across his career, Savinho is in and around, if not just a bit ahead there with last season. Carries into the penalty area, significantly ahead of Rodrigo there, where he's coming up to 4 carries into the penalty area per 90, versus you look at Rodrigo's average across his time at Real Madrid, 2.61, even last season 2.34. So you got that there. You got goal creating action, 0.77. Rodrigo's only had 1 season more, 0.8 in the 22-23 season, but particularly when you're looking at the last 2 seasons, not close to what Savinho was doing last season. For Manchester City, we look at progressive passes. This is one of the things Rodrigo really does stand out for, is that passing ability, particularly last season, ahead of what Savinho was putting up. You look at shot creating actions, 5.66 from Savinho. You look at that Madrid average for Rodrigo, 4.31. Even the 23. So not 23-24, the 22-23 season, 5.04, still behind Savinho in his first season at Manchester City. You look at progressive carries, significantly ahead there, almost 2 progressive carries more per 90 than Rodrigo is putting up for those last 3 seasons, and the average at Real Madrid, and then ball recoveries as well. Even in a team like Manchester City, who, as I mentioned throughout the video, dysfunctional, not the very best out of possession, not the most efficient at winning a ball, yet he's still putting out more ball recoveries per 90. Would say you're kind of comparing that to a Madrid team that don't press very well, so it'd be interesting to see what those numbers turn out like this season after they've had that full season with Xavi Alonso. But as you can see, for all of these different metrics that I pulled up and compared to, Savinho is not miles behind Rodrigo. If anything, most of them he's either alongside him or he's ahead of them. So yeah, I think as we kind of like move towards the end of this video, he has very clear faults with his shooting and goal scoring ability that have to improve. I think there's a lot of promise with the runs he makes and the positions he gets into, and his kind of desire to keep trying and keep taking shots. I think that's all really, really good, but he absolutely does have to improve on the things that we mentioned in terms of his body posture and his ball striking and his touches and the way he sets up his shots and so on. He has to improve all of that inside the opposition box to score more goals and take those chances. But then when we're looking at kind of creative side, the progressive side, the way he works off the ball, somebody that's available every 3 days to play a game, that more often than not sustains that kind of intensity, that energy throughout 90 minutes as well. Somebody that doesn't have a bad injury record. There's just a lot of reasons why he's a very good player to have within the team. Somebody you can expect to develop and improve significantly across his career. And when you can compare him to Oscar Bob on that right hand side, to have those 2 players there that across the season will fight for the spot, that both press very well, that have a lot of energy, that should really be fit throughout the season. I think that's put City in a great spot on that right wing, heading into and across this coming season to do very well. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my thoughts on the player. I'm glad to see him stay. I think it would be perhaps a kind of small upgrade to bring in Rodrigo, and it's specifically for the area that people do want to see in terms of bringing more goals, and that's one of the things I think is fair for people to want, that you want to have at least one more player on a team that can guarantee goals. Marmoush is meant to have been that player, and I think he will eventually score more and more goals and show that, but I think it's definitely fair for people to want just another winger that is proven. But I think by the end of this season we'll have changed our mind quite significantly on that, especially with the promise of Savinho and Doku, particularly with how outstanding I think Oscar Bob is. I think opinions will change quite drastically over the course of that season. But yeah, I completely understand why it's a bit of a kind of 50-50 thing for a lot of people. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you have any questions on anything, then let me know down below. I'll jump in the comments, reply, and we can have that discussion. Make sure you like the video to help support the channel, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video.